Hey.
Oh,
Welcome back, everybody. Episode 3. I'm Tony.
I'm Josh.
And we are Creepin' It Real. Josh, we just had a little hangout here before we did this episode.
Pre-production meeting.
Very
professional.
Very professional. I mean, Jello shots, that's included, I think.
Yes, exactly.
That's mandatory for when you're doing pre-meetings.
Yeah, I thought we were going to keep the Jello shots between us. But yeah, it's out there now, so no judging. Okay.
Whoops. I didn't know we were keeping this a secret. Especially those two older ladies that were calling us out for being men doing Jello shots.
Well, they were women and they were ripping whiskey shots. So I don't know if they were going to jump us or jump on us at this point. So
depends on how much more whiskey they had. Who knows?
Or how many Jello shots I had.
Fair enough. All right. So this week, I know we decided we're going to just bounce on through a couple of movies.
We kind of did a bunch of old school stuff, and we kind of felt, that we had done some classic stuff as some introductory. Now we kind of wanted to get into more of the newer age stuff, which would have been, the cooler stuff that we thought was good. Well, some of us think are good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, our taste probably is different from most. Although, I don't know. I mean, there's probably... Yeah, probably.
Yeah, so we're going to start off. We're talking about... couple of movies, some spooky STDs in there. We're gonna talk about some childhood murder and fucking like the veteran version of Mr. Magoo. I think is that what we came to the conclusion to? Something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Mr. Magoo, Casper with STDs. Yeah, essentially, this is our playthrough for tonight.
Yeah, so we're gonna start it off, and one I'm really excited about. We were going to cover the movie Sinister. And
I'm really excited.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. It stars Ethan Hawke, and his wife Tracy and him moved to a town in Pennsylvania in which a family is horrifically murdered.
Right. And his job is that he is a true crimes writer. He writes books on different murders and whatnot. So he moves into this house because he hears about these murders that happened. So this is essentially his next job spot. Yeah,
so the funniest part about this is he never tells his wife. Well, he does, eventually.
Yeah.
But she, straight out asks him, the first 10 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
Don't tell us we moved down the street from a crime scene, did we? She got her British accent. And he's like, we didn't move down the street from a crime scene.
Technically, he wasn't lying.
Yeah, it's one of those fuck you scenes where it's technically he wasn't lying.
Yeah. It's like, no, I promise.
We actually moved into the fucking house. It didn't happen here. It happened in the backyard.
Right.
So,
we're not a few houses down. We're actually in the house.
He tries to squirm his way out of it. So anyway, there's these horrific murders, or this horrific murder, that took place in this house that they move into, in the backyard, where the opening scene of Sinister is
which is a great opening.
Yes, great opening. It's very quiet. It's shot in 8mm.
Yep, the old 8mm film.
And it's basically an invisible person sawing a tree branch that is attached to a rope that is hanging a family of 4.
Yeah, so essentially, if you haven't seen it or not getting the idea, there's the family of 4 all standing there with nooses around their neck, and it's going up over the branch, which is now tied to a different branch on the other side of the tree. So cutting this heavy-ass branch down is putting all of the weight, which lifts all of the ropes up and starts hanging them.
Yeah, and there's no soundtrack to it, at the beginning. It's just dead silent, 8mm running, flipping of, the film.
Yep.
Yeah, all you hear. There's no sound to it, and it's just very creepy, and then in the corner it just says Sinister. And that's how the movie starts. And then it kind of jumps into Ethan Hawke unloading, the truck to unload all their, possessions they're moving into the house, and for him to start writing this crime novel. And then he's greeted by the town
sheriff.
Yeah, the town sheriff.
Yeah.
And his deputy who wants an autograph, and he's just like, an autograph? Are you fucking kidding me? We're here on fucking business. And he's like, well, I just thought. And he's just basically tells him to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just I love the little punches too, where the cops, the sheriff is saying things to him, and then he's like, well, not everybody in your business gets it correct, and he goes, yeah, I've read your books, neither did you.
No.
And I was like, wow, nice burn.
Yeah, well, the one thing about Ethan Hawke's character in there is he is kind of struggling financially. You kind of gather through this movie, and he came out with one book, Kentucky Blood, which was very successful. Book, yeah. He did like a bunch of TV spots for it. It bought him this huge house, and then he had 2 follow-up books. None of them did very well. Both of them were kind of, and even the sheriff hints at the fact that like some of his, ideals that kind of let men go free that committed these horrible crimes. Mm-hmm. So,
and also bringing the attraction of tourists coming to their small town, invading them and making it into like a shit horror.
Yeah, like you said, freak show or sideshow that comes with you.
Yeah. And so essentially after that, he's getting the family like comfortable, and he's got his own office where he's putting all these different pictures and stuff together. He even has the whole board with like the yarn tied together and all that.
Yeah, and it's funny because later on you meet Deputy So-and-so, he's one of my favorite characters in the movie.
It's great.
And he's like, this is like an FBI crime scene. Oh my God, you got like yarn attached to pictures and stuff. And he's like, dude, no, you gotta get the fuck out of here.
Deputy So-and-so.
Yeah, he's like, the one you think, and he's like, on the think page, and he's like, you mean, what was the word he uses there? God damn it. The recognitions.
Yeah, and the acknowledgements.
The acknowledgements, yes.
Yeah.
So he actually never knows his name the whole movie, I don't think.
No, because even when he calls him later in the movie, when the caller ID shows up, it says Deputy So-and-so.
Yeah, never acknowledges the guy's name.
Right.
So, basically they move into this house with their daughter and their son. And, he decides to start looking into things on the first night. And then I'm trying to think about it.
Then the son, like he hears like creepy shit going on, like the power goes out. He's hearing like noises like up like in the attic or something, so he's like, what the fuck? And then he like goes out walking around the house trying to find like the thing like to turn the power back on. And then in the kitchen he sees like this like cardboard box just sitting there. And then all of a sudden, this body comes out, bending backwards, and starts screaming, which turns out to being, and it like freaks him the fuck out, but ends up turning being his son having like a night terror.
Yeah, do you know that was actually after a scene that actually happened to the director? His son like had experienced night terrors and had done something similar to that.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, he was in a fucking box, and like, imagine like, how creepy it was in the movie. Imagine like seeing it in real life.
Yeah.
So I was, doing a little bit of research on it, and he was talking about, how he had stumbled upon his son doing something similar. So he had the backbending thing was an actual thing that had happened to one of the, one of the writers of the film, the main writer, I would like to say. So he kind of carried that over because he was just like, wow, that's fucked up.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great idea. It was a good addition to the movie to like add in. That's awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, he kind of goes into it, and then he discovers the box in the attic.
Yep.
And is it the first night or is it maybe the second night?
It's it's the second night, because the first night, because then the next morning, he's like talking about it. They're talking about it at breakfast.
Yeah, and he's talking about one of the previous night terrors that Trevor the son had, and he's just like, remember the time you were caught peeing in the dryer? He's like, please don't talk about the dryer again. Right, and the daughter comes downstairs. Yeah, makes the joke the same.
So yeah, then eventually it starts, continuing on, and then he's like in his office and working on shit. That's when he finally, something else happens where he like makes his way up and like goes up into the attic, and he finds this.
Well, he hears the footsteps in the attic.
That's what
and
it
he goes to see what the fuck's going on up there, and he finds this box full of 8mm film.
And it says home movies on the side of the box.
Yeah, so it's like home movies, and they're all individually labeled, and they kind of get further and more extreme through the film. And Tracy, his wife, you kind of get this sense that she doesn't want to be there. Like, she's kind of done with the whole, like, it's too dark for everybody, including the kids. And the only reason she's actually there is because Ethan Hawke really wants to do this book that he feels is, like, his next big shot.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like he's holding on to that, like, his glory days, where he was doing the TV spots and all that. And he's kind of like, no, this is my net. Yeah. This is this is my chance of redemption. And this is, like, the movie or whatever. So then he kind of brings the box down and
Mm-hmm.
starts the first 8mm.
Yeah, so he opens up the box, and the first one is like called like hanging out with the family or whatever, and then that's where the initial clip you see in the very intro of the family. Like first you see like the family kind of like around the yard and just kind of having like a little backyard kind of party thing with just the family kind of playing around, throwing a football, etc. And then it automatically just clicks over to seeing a family of 4 that are all have like sacks around their heads with nooses around their necks with like what we were explaining earlier. But the thing is, and I did this too, I remember like when I was like watching this movie and I go, well, if that's the family, like who the fuck is filming this? And then he writes down like who
Where was
filmed,
Stephanie?
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
he first of all like who filmed it.
Yeah.
And then the thing is with that family, there was a daughter that went missing.
Yeah.
So then he's like, where's Stephanie? You know, who's shooting this?
And that's why he's here to kind of write in this book. Is he's chasing fame, but
Mm-hmm.
his underlining tone or whatever he says, he's like, well, there's a missing girl involved. And he's talking to the sheriff, and he's just like, well, you know, like, there's a missing girl. And he's like, well, she's gone. And you want to know where she is?
Well, no,
You
the
probably
sheriff,
don't want to know that answer either.
Well, no, the sheriff thought he was dead, or she was dead.
Yeah, she thinks
he's
she's
like,
dead.
it's been gone for too long. Like, she's dead. And then he's like, you don't know that. Like, she could still just be missing. And then, yeah, that's like when the sheriff said that.
Yeah. So he stumbles upon the first one, which is like the family hanging out. It's a 8mm movie. And then it kind of flashes forward to them like hanging out and, you know, playing frisbee and playing on swings and doing family type things, and it flashes.
Yeah.
You know, and then it flashes over to the opening scene, which is where they're all hanging from the fucking tree.
Sorry, I literally like just said this like 15 seconds ago.
Did you really?
Yeah. You're literally just saying everything I just said. But that's that's fine. That's great.
Well, let's just carry on then.
We'll just pretend like that didn't happen. No, that's actually hilarious. But yeah, no. Then after that, then this like really starts to like pique his interest, and then like like the next day happens, and then he's like trying to figure out, and then you could see him kind of like looking like they keep showing like the tree that's in the backyard because this is the house that scene happened.
Yeah.
So then the next night he decides to open up the second film because I believe there was 5 in the box.
There is 5. Yeah.
And then the second one was called like the family barbecue.
Yep.
And so this essentially is like the same thing. You see a family that's all kind of, they're same thing.
Having
like,
a family barbecue.
Yeah, exactly.
They're
yeah,
playing in the yard.
self-explained.
Very
And-
stereotypical, like suburban kind of like outing.
But they keep having the shot towards like the car. You see the dad walking around the car and like trying to open up the door and blah blah blah, and then boom, it cuts, and then the camera is now showing the car, and there's chains wrapped all around it. There's the family inside that are all like duct taped, and then all of a sudden you see like a can of gasoline that's like in the back seat, like with the mom, and then all of a sudden the camera is like facing like the front of the car, and the whole car just fucking lights up on fire.
Yeah. And that's kind of where you got to get. And one of the things, the best part about this movie was the fucking soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
It was so simplistic, like just the
But effective.
it was so effective. It had, it was very eerie with its tone, and it had like the voices in the background, and it had like it was like almost like a digital like techno beat in the background, just like
Right.
like a thumping in the background.
But when you quiet that down and kind of like
It was so subtle.
it's way more eerie.
Yeah. So then he's kind of just,
Does it make you want to like take Molly and start
yeah,
throwing
it
around
made me
glow
want to.
sticks?
Yeah, I wanted to go put my Adidas visor on and fucking go to a rave with my spiky hair. But so anyway, so he's it kind of goes through the movie where he's like gradually going through these films, and he's
Yeah.
drinking this bottle of whiskey
Oh yeah.
like it's nobody's business through these films because he can't watch them all in one sitting, and they're so gut wrenching to him to see these live murders. They're basically like, just live, basically. They're snuff films. Is
Yeah,
what
yeah.
they are.
Essentially, yeah.
So he kind of digs into the next one, which is the pool party.
The pool party, and
Yeah.
this is where shit starts.
You start
to, like,
seeing the Bagul or whatever.
Mr. Boogie.
Yeah, Mr. Boogie. Where they got these cinder blocks attached to these lawn chairs. And you don't see the fucking character that's there, but somebody is pulling these family members into this pool with these cinder blocks attached to them, and you're just watching him drown.
Yep.
Like on 8mm film.
Yep.
And then he kind of, is that where it catches on fire?
Yeah,
is during that one too?
Yep. It catches on fire, and then he's like, oh shit, he like puts it out. So then he like figures out how to like splice the film.
Yeah, and
then he takes his own actual like newer video recorder, puts it on and plays it and like records it on there. That's when he uploads it onto his laptop, rewatches it. So when he starts slowing it down frame by frame, that's when he notices that random face. It's like down there in the water.
Yeah, the Bagul.
Mr. Boggie.
Yeah, Mr. Boggie. And then he kind of starts looking at the barbecue film too, and he notices that the Bagul, I'm sorry, is sitting there in the back window. So and then he looks at the hanging out, and then he notices in the back bushes, the Bagul's there too. So he starts like snapping these shots or whatever and putting them on his little FBI board full of yarn or whatever.
Right.
And he starts, making, the connection, and then he, everything kind of goes to where you kind of get the plot development. It starts happening at that point. It's kind of introductory at this point, and then it goes kind of a little more extreme after that. And then his son gets busted on the first day of school after he takes him to breakfast for drawing the kids being hung with permanent marker on the whiteboard and all that. So, and then we kind of get into the fourth one of this.
Yeah, that one was called, I think it was like Sleepy Time?
Yeah, Sleepy Time.
Yep.
Where it's kind of, there's a first-person camera shot or whatever, and this person walks from room to room where everybody is tied down, still awake, and starts slitting their throats.
Yeah, it's like with like packing tape this time.
Yeah. And you can kind of, and then when they slow it down, which he's actually recording this live on a camcorder, you can see something on the wall.
Yep.
And that's kind of where he starts putting together that there's something might be satanic going on, and that these might be satanic ritual killings.
Yeah, and he still was unsure what was going on. He's noticed that this same ghoulish face kept appearing in all of the films that he was watching. And I forget when, I think that's when he thought he heard the movements up in the attic, which like I think it was, I don't know if it's the deputy or whatever, like, oh yeah, it's squirrels or whatever. And he finds the lid.
What the funny line of that is well, you wouldn't be able, squirrels wouldn't make that loud of a noise. And he's like, it could, and he's like, I don't know, what squirrels sound like. And he's like, well, it could have been a snake. He's like, well, snakes don't have feet.
Yeah. And he's like, I also found a scorpion up there when we first moved in. He's like, yeah, but you wouldn't hear scorpions walk around up there.
Yeah.
It's got to be a squirrel.
Yeah, so Deputy So-and-so,
he's the comic relief.
Yes, he is. He's like the, the Dewey of it.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, Dewey.
He's kind of like the dumbfounded, goofy deputy cop. He's kind of the comedic relief of the whole thing. Right. Asks for an autograph, of Kentucky Blood from him, and that's where he kind of puts himself in there like, hey, we talked about this before.
Right.
Hey, can I be your, Deputy So-and-so on your acknowledgement page?
Right, yeah.
So,
which then he does give him some. He gives him like a couple of addresses, and he's like, hey, here's this address. Here is the death that happened. He starts talking about the pool and the fire, and just like, hey, yeah, you know what? Actually, he's taking advantage of this deputy being like the fan, saying like, you know what? You can actually help me out. He's like, I don't know the names or whatever, but I need you to look up this address, and like, this is what the style of the execution was. Get me as much info as you possibly can.
Yeah. And he kind of, when he gives him, this information over the phone, he kind of is like, well, what does that mean something to you? Because he's got, like, the previous addresses of, the previous
yeah, but hold on, don't spoil it yet, because you don't find that out until later on when he finally does answer the call.
Well, no, yeah. Well, it's the call. I'm talking about beforehand.
Oh, okay.
Before
You're right. Oh, yeah.
He's like, well, does that mean anything to you? And he's looking at the previous homeowner's address. He's like, nope. All right, bye. Hangs up the phone abruptly
just doing some more research.
Yeah,
whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Plays it off.
So, so that's when he goes up there in the attic to figure out what the fuck that noise is. And that's when he didn't realize when he took the lid off the box of the home movies tape, he didn't look at the lid, but he saw it this time. And there was actually, it looks like little kid drawings of all of the murders.
Yep,
and like
Sharpie
it'd be
marker.
Like, yeah, and be like Mom, Dad, Tommy, Sally, and all 4 tapes or 5 tapes or whatever, like each one that we talked about, like the hanging of the trees, the car burning, the pool party, they're all marked in there.
Yeah. And then after that, after he, the deputy so-and-so shows up at the house, after he watches the 4th to last film.
Well, there's a 5th one too.
That's the 4th to last. The last one. So before he watches the last film, deputy so-and-so, shows up and he's like, hey, I know you don't think much of me, but he's like, I know killings that are, attached. And he's like, I did my share of studies on this. So deputy so-and-so in the film, he kind of is just like, hey, I got to be in the loop a little bit.
Right.
If you're going to if I got to keep giving you information, like I know connected killings when I see them.
Right. You have to give me a little bit of something.
Yeah. So he gives him something. It's nothing. I mean, he's still kind of playing it off.
Yeah.
Keeps him a little bit in the loop, but really doesn't at all. Which brings us to the final film.
Right. And this is the one that really got him, because like it's weird because like you're just when he puts that 5th film on, I don't think there was actually like any family part in the beginning of it. It was just straight up like the cameras. It's at nighttime. The camera's focusing on like this lawnmower, starts up, and you just see this lawnmower going through the lawn.
And this made me cringe when I watched it first time.
I did.
It got me pretty good.
Yeah, I did as well.
I
gotta also admit, like, it's very hard to get me to like jump. And like when they have like all those horror movies that have those like fucking jump scenes, this one definitely got me at least maybe twice.
Yeah.
Like this one had it. They did it right.
Yeah, it did. And it also came hand in hand with the soundtrack as well. Because that sound when he runs over. Well, ultimately, so this is what happens.
Yeah.
He has the lawnmower, and it's kind of like in the rain. He's just mowing the lawn, and it's dark. There's a flashlight. I mean, I say he. I don't. You don't know who it is.
Yeah.
And then it's just somebody laying.
Sexist.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. He, she. So anyway.
It's ma'am.
So anyway, so there's someone, and then all of a sudden it just grinds over one of the family members' heads.
Yeah.
And this is where, like, it just flashes away to Ethan Hawke, and he's just completely blown away. I mean, like, imagine seeing that on film. It doesn't actually show you what happened. It flashes away. I can't imagine what that must have looked like.
Oh, yeah. And, like, and I have a lot of friends that are fucked up. They like watching those, like, beheading videos. Like, remember, like, for a while, like, those were around on the internet all the time. There's no fucking way that I can watch those. Like, that shit's I mean, I can watch the sickest shit in horror movies, but when I'm watching, like, real actual footage of someone being beheaded with, like, a shitty dull knife, that fucks me up. Like, I can't watch that shit.
Oh, yeah.
So I can only imagine, like, when he's watching this, like, to
what
him
he's
it's
actually
real.
feeling.
Yeah. Because he cringes up real bad.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we come to the whole conclusion of why.
Also, by the way, each one of these films, he starts figuring out that there's a child missing from each family for everything that happens in all of these.
Yeah. And, he kind of comes to the conclusion that the house is haunted. And
right.
Which is what he concludes, but it's not actually what's happening. So he makes the mistake of...
Wait. Before you get there,
okay.
He does think it's haunted because when he was in the attic and he fell through, like, kind of partially, because he had, like, the camera with him, and he went back and looked at it and was, like, freeze framing it. He could see all these little hands that were, like, pulling down on him, like, on his, like, shoulders.
Oh, yeah, when he did it, and, like, when he flashed through the frame by frame.
Yeah, and then when he's, like, walking around the house, checking on, like, everybody, making sure they're still asleep, he goes in his daughter's room, and he walks in there, and he's like, okay, she's facing the opposite direction, but she's fast asleep. He closes the door, and then when the camera comes up to her, she's wide-eyed, facing the corner of the wall, and as the camera, like, pans out, there's the painting, because this little girl used to, like, paint stuff on her walls, like horses and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But the family that was hung on the tree is painted on the wall. And as it zooms out more, there's the little girl, Stephanie.
Yeah, the little dead
that's
girl.
sitting in the corner, staring at her, and puts her finger up to her mouth and does the whole, like, shh thing.
Yeah.
So that's when he starts noticing there's ghostly shit that is happening in the house.
Yeah, and the ghostly shit, comes to it where ultimately he burns the film thinking that's going to disregard the issue, and he decides that, hey, you know what, wife Tracy was right. All right, we got to move our family back home to our mansion, in I think it's Rhode Island or, something like that.
Yeah, something out there, yeah.
So he moves him back there, and that's actually where he makes his biggest mistake. Because these movies are all intertwined because the residents that have died lived in the previous resident's address.
Which Deputy so-and-so kept calling him. He kept declining, trying to get his shit together. When he finally answers, that's when Deputy so-and-so tells him that here's the connection, that every family that was murdered lived in the previous house of the family that was murdered. So essentially whatever this Mr. Boggie is following families. Like, oh, you lived in the house where this murder just happens? You moved? Now he follows them. And then waits for a family to move in that house. Once they move out, so forth.
Meanwhile, he's already finished his cup of coffee served from his daughter, who is the one where you start figuring out the kids are killing the families. So he drinks his coffee as he's, getting off the phone, and he's starting to feel dizzy and lightheaded. And then he faints, and he wakes up with his family in the same state where they're all tied up on the floor, and they're all half unconscious, and in comes the daughter and she's like, what does she say there? I'm trying to think about that line. Did you like your coffee, Daddy? Or something something along those lines. And she basically, it flashes away where she lops off their head, right?
She dismembered them in 3 separate parts.
Yeah.
Which they didn't show, but it shows the little girl sitting at her dad's desk, with the lid of the family videos box, the home movies box, in front of her, and she's actually the next person. She's drawing what she just did to her family. Yeah. There's mommy, daddy, and what's the son's name? Trevor. Yeah, and then all of them.
Yep.
All of them have their heads. Then there's a black space, and then the bodies in black space. So she dismembered them in 3 parts.
And then
and her hands are all bloody.
The creepy character in this thing is the Magoo, which a lot of people think is the ghoul, but it's actually Bagul is the mythological, eater of children that they is the person that's controlling these children.
Right. And
that's ultimately how he brings them into whatever hell or whatever part of his ghoul posse, I guess you would be,
insane ghoul posse.
Yeah, his insane ghoul posse.
It's the IGP.
Yeah. And then it kind of goes to an 8mm film on the wall that she starts, and you could see the Bagul standing there with his insane ghoul posse, bringing her into the film.
Right.
And that's kind of where the conclusion comes from. And all in all, man, I fucking love that film.
I really did too. And I watched this years ago for the first time, when it first came out, and I was actually my buddy that I was living with, and he's like, yo, we should check out this movie. I was like, yeah, this sounds great. It's right up my alley. And we're fucking watching it, nighttime, whatever. And it was really funny because as it's starting to get real intense, and I can hear some noise, and I look over, and he's just fucking sawing logs on the couch. And I was like, this son of a bitch. This is shit. It's getting insane, man. It's fucking night. It's fucking pitch black in the fucking house except for the TV. And I was like, oh man, this is awesome. I'm so intense.
And he's fucking passed out.
Yeah.
So all in all, this is kind of the one weird thing about this movie was there was such a hiatus for horror with me between this and, the previous horror movies that came out.
Agreed.
Where Sinister was not only so good, it actually brought me back to horror more so because I had been revisiting things that I revisited for years, and I was always just I hate, new horror. I hate new horror.
Yeah.
Nothing's good. Nothing good comes out, which is something I always say is nothing good comes out. And you come up with this movie Sinister, and it was just completely mind-blowing to me how good it was. Everything from the soundtrack to the Bagul character, to the twist ending, which, you know, like...
That was a great way to, like, they wrapped it up. Because a lot of these new movies, you can have a really good movie, but then the ending blows.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah, we talk about that all the time.
Right.
Where movies hit it on so many fucking levels, and then they just
fuck it up right
fucked up the end. It's just like, man, like, you could have really wrapped that up better. We had that discussion during the Pet Sematary remake.
That's true. Yeah.
So, you know, I thought Ethan Hawke was casted really well. I love his wife Tracy in the film. Trevor, his daughter, which I think is it Ellie again, I think?
I don't know. That would be funny. I don't remember. Usually I'm pretty dead on, like, remembering, like, the characters' names, but I don't know. That's why I had to ask earlier. I was like, what the hell was the son's name? And I forgot already. Honestly, I don't remember.
Hold on, let me look it up real quick.
Okay. I'll distract the audience. So, hey, how's everybody doing?
Oh, okay. No, it's okay. Ashley. Ashley's her name. Sorry.
Okay.
So Ashley's her name, not Ellie. I stand corrected. But I felt the casting all the way around was done really well.
Yeah.
The soundtrack to it was perfect. The cinematography was great.
Fantastic.
Great story overall. Something original, you know, that hadn't been done before. And for me, it was kind of when people talk about new horror and nothing good comes out, I'm like, I always start with, like, well, have you seen Sinister? Even though it came out, like, 7 years ago.
Right.
Because that was kind of, my segue. They're like, I haven't watched anything since old school horror. I'm like, well, have you seen Sinister? Like, that movie's fucking excellent.
Right. That was actually a lot of suggestion for me as well when people, because I took a lot of time that I would watch so much horror shit that, like, I ran out of material to watch. Like, I could have just gone and watched, like, shitty B-budget movies. Again, I'm using that word politely for you. Because I mean that in the best way possible.
I will allow it.
Yeah, I use that in the best way possible. But I just searched the fucking internet, like, just trying to find anything. And I actually found a lot of really good ones that we'll definitely talk about later episodes. And then there was, of course, the ones that are actually just junk,
Yeah.
But
and
like,
this was kind of like one of those where you had a lot of the, I'll use that quote with you, shitty horror movies. And Sinister wasn't like a shitty B-rated horror movie.
No, not at all.
It wasn't, I hate, because we're going to get into this here in a second. A big budget, big production company movie, I guess, because Blumhouse does, we're going to talk about this in a minute. But Blumhouse does such a good fucking job.
They do. They have such great movies. And the thing is, I didn't even realize even Blumhouse did it. Well, I mean, like, obviously you see it before the movie starts. But when I watched this movie, for the first time, it was in 2013.
Yeah.
The movie came out in 2012. So it was, like, freshly out. That's when I watched it. So I was like, oh, great. And then when I rewatched it, and I was like, oh, fuck yeah, I completely forgot that Blumhouse did this.
Well, yeah, it was like, looking back on it, like, everything that Blumhouse has done, which we were rattling them off earlier, and let me rattle off some of these big names because I just think it's so important that we talk about. They did the Paranormal Activity movies. They did
Purge.
The
Insidious.
Purge movies, Lords of Salem.
They did the remake of the Halloween.
Yeah, the remake of the Halloween. And what they did, the Lazarus Effect. I mean, you got Creep.
Yeah. And The Gift, which is, that's what we were talking about earlier, Jason Bateman. I mean, Jason Bateman, I'm sure he has no problem with doing low-budget movies, but still, like, that was a great fucking movie.
Yeah.
The Visit, that's M. Night Shyamalan. Green Inferno, that's Eli Roth.
Split. Hush.
Yeah. Oh, man, Hush. That was such a amazing find. I
know.
Randomly found it on Netflix, and I was like, this sounds cool. I watched it. I love it. I recommend it to a whole bunch of people.
But let's kind of talk about this though. So Blumhouse comes out with all these awesome films, and they do it lower budget. I would like to say, not extremely low budget, but they bring such good production value through casting, and like just picking good stories. Like, let's talk about like Paranormal Activity. We're not gonna go into the movie, of course, but we're talking about Blumhouse. Budget for that, they made that for fucking $15,000. That made fucking $193 million.
Amazing.
I mean, shit.
Amazing.
They do that with every single one of their films. We were talking earlier about the Halloween remake, made for 10 to 15 mil. It made $295 million just by picking good stories and presenting them in a good way.
To be fair, also that's expected. To be fair, that was expected. It's Halloween. Jamie Lee Curtis,
But you're spending like half that budget on Jamie Lee Curtis.
True.
So.
But it's also another Halloween movie, and fellas and ladies as yourself, are huge Halloween fans. So of course it's going to be, people are going to go see it just because it has a Halloween name.
Yeah, and they also right now they're doing they financed and partnered up with Eli Roth's Crypt TV too, which I haven't dug too much into, but I've heard really good things. And I know you're a huge Eli Roth guy, and I'm not so much an Eli Roth guy, but
I love his sense of gore and stories, and
there are a couple I can pick out there that are pretty good.
Yeah.
But he's doing Crypt TV with them right now. Blumhouse Productions are. But just such an if you guys ever see a Blumhouse film and you're a horror fan, check it out. I do. Every single movie, that's done by Blumhouse. I do. I just know it's going to be good. You're of course you're going to hit and miss on some, but for a majority, all the way around, such a well-rounded company with such a, I guess a niche for that horror genre where they just play they pick these great stories and they just deliver them with such a low budget.
Right.
And that's kind of what they stand by. That's their thing. They're we make lower budget movies, not low budget. But lower, I mean, Paranormal Activity, $15,000. That's a pretty low budget film.
Yeah, absolutely.
But all the way around, applause to Blumhouse.
100%.
Yeah.
There's been times that I was looking just for something to watch. I was I want something scary. I don't even know what to fucking look up. I've just looked up Blumhouse's IMDb just to scroll through movies that I haven't seen. That I'm okay, this sounds cool. Great, let's fucking watch it.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we pretty much know that we think that Sinister's a pretty badass, kick-ass movie.
100%.
So what do you rate it out of 10?
Oh, 10 for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely give it a 10.
Yeah, it's a 10 for me as well. Casting, just
soundtrack,
visionary cinematography, soundtrack,
story,
all the way around, ending, everything. Because you don't get the ending right, you don't land it, you don't get a 10.
Yeah.
But I enjoy it. I probably watched it, probably 20, 30 times probably. It's always one of those go-tos, and I always use the term one of the most watchable movies is definitely Sinister. So very pleased with that. So if you haven't checked it out, definitely check it out.
Mm-hmm. Also, I mean, I thought about this, that maybe at the beginning of the episodes we should be saying there's gonna be spoiler alerts, but at the same time, I mean, I guess if you'd be listening to this, if you haven't seen the movie, then
your spoiler alerts are already up. All right,
yeah.
We'll save it. We're gonna do Brightburn and Mon in a couple weeks. We'll save the spoiler alerts for those. I mean, if there's a movie that came out,
brand new episode, yeah. I mean, this movie came out in 2012, so
if you haven't seen it yet, you've already vetoed your fucking spoiler alerts at this point.
Fair enough. Okay. I mean, maybe it should just be expected anyways. If you're gonna listen to any of these episodes that we fucking do, we're gonna go all the way to the ending. So if you don't want to listen to it, or you don't want to know what the ending is, maybe get partially the way through, watch the movie, then continue the rest of the episode. I don't know.
You ready for a spoiler alert?
Yes.
Tony Stark dies at the end. Boom.
Wow. You know who else dies at the end?
Who?
There's this movie that came out. It's not that long ago. It was called The Sixth Sense. Guess what? He was actually dead the whole time.
Oh, fucking Bruce
Willis!
Willis?
Tricked you. I tricked you.
You fucker.
You thought I was saying he died at the end, but he actually was dead the whole time.
Damn.
Totally got you.
I haven't even seen that yet either.
Well, your spoiler's vetoed. That came out 15 years ago. Vetoed.
God damn it. All right, fine. All right. So, you all around go see Sinister.
Yeah, amazing. So,
and now we're gonna kind of get into some what we call them, spooky Casper STDs.
Yeah, the Casper STDs. I'm actually really excited to talk about.
And I'm really excited to talk about it too because I had not seen this movie, and Tony and I were bouncing ideas of what we're gonna talk about in this episode, and he's like, yeah, we're gonna talk about newer horror movies, and we were kind of talking about a couple other ones that had came out, like It Follows. And he had talked about this movie, Contracted, that had come out. And I'm like, what? I mean, I'd passed by it in the old Family videos. One of the few family or video stores that are still standing.
Yeah.
And I never rented it because I did nothing about it appealed to me. Maybe the cover was misleading. I thought it was like one of those alien virus movies that it came out B-rated. You know, there are a million of those. So I indulged in it this week, and I gotta say, so if you haven't seen it yet, the synopsis of it is
I'm so excited. Wait. Yeah. And the thing is too is like when I had mentioned this before, when I like first brought it up, this was one of those movies that like I was scouring the internet. I'm like, I've watched so many fucking horror movies. What the fuck can I watch?
And you found this gem.
And I found this, a lot with this with like others, but like this one stuck out to me. And I was like, this one is so good. Like, and it takes a lot to really kind of get me to cringe. But this one, and the beauty
it was cringe-worthy.
100%. And the beauty of it is too is that we talked about, I think, last episode that we both have that thing where like I have a problem with like teeth being pulled out. You have a problem with
the
nails
fucking
getting ripped off.
Yeah, I fucking hate that.
And this movie has both of those.
Yeah,
things
both of them
on top of other shit.
So we'll kind of run through it.
I'm really excited about this.
Dude. So anyway.
Again, the movie's called Contracted. If you haven't seen it, find it on the fucking internet. It might be on a streaming site. I don't know.
And I was surprised this came out in 2013. You know, like, I am usually on top of that kind of shit.
Yeah.
But that's what, you know, having friends that are into the same kind of shit that you are is kind of comes in handy because I was completely like, I definitely enjoyed this one. So the opening scene is it's fucking dark, guys. No judging on my behalf.
Get ready for this ride. Buckle up, baby boys and girls.
So it starts off in a morgue, and it is man, I don't even want to describe it.
I'll do it.
Yeah, okay, you do it because I'm gonna feel like people are gonna be judging me.
I don't care.
And I did like it. But I'll let Tony talk on behalf of it.
So, right off the rip, the movie starts and you see
you got your arms crossed. Are you nervous now?
Oh, no, not nervous at all. I don't know. I'm just really excited. I don't know what to do with my hands. So the movie starts off and it's just all you see is a pair of feet hanging off of a table, which you recognize being like in a morgue or autopsy room, whatever. But there's also the toe tag. So automatically you're like, okay, this is a dead person's body. You recognize it being female with like the nails and stuff. And then all of a sudden, within like 5 seconds or so, it's just shaking back and forth. Like the table shaking back and forth, like jerking back and forth. And you're like, oh my God, somebody is having sex with this dead chick's body.
Okay, but in all seriousness, we're not watching it for this specific reason, like not to, the shock value of that.
Necrophilia,
no, that's not even what I meant, but you went there, pretty
I'm
dark.
Not Josh's.
What the fuck? It just happened to me. I just got blindsided.
I'm just kidding.
So, this kind of leads into the story. It kind of tells what's going on.
Yeah.
So, after...
What a great, short and sweet, right to the point, hey, here's the shit of
it. Yeah, it just makes you feel uncomfortable right off the bat. So it kind of then they go to the party scene.
Yeah, which so after that scene, then you see like the body bag gets zipped up and you see the lady's face and her body, like okay, this dude just banged this dead chick's body, zipped the bag up, and he is on his way.
All right, we're still going there? Okay.
Sorry, I'm just I gotta let these people know. So then it cuts to the party scene.
All right,
which essentially makes you feel like, did you ever watch Can't Hardly Wait?
Yes.
So it's like
Guilty as charged.
Dude, I love that movie. I still watch it all the time.
Okay.
It's like a 90s teen party movie. This girl breaks up with her boyfriend, which is Jennifer Love Hewitt, 90s babe, swing. And she's walking around the party and everyone's like, "Oh, this chick's such a babe," and all these different dudes are coming up and hitting on her. Same kind of thing. So this girl is walking around her friend's party. And her and her girlfriend broke up, and
I think they're kind of on a hiatus. I mean, the character Nikki, which is her girlfriend, Sam's girlfriend, is kind of a bitch.
Yeah. It's just she's just kind of like, we're kind of done, and you're still kind of like sticking around.
Yeah. So
we've all been there, right?
Yeah. So she's kind of like trying to lure her in this party by offering good times with friends, and all her friends are offering these, well, where's Nikki at? Like these awkward exchanges. They're just like, Yeah, she's got to work late, you know, giving excuses for it because she really just wanted to tell her friends that it's kind of pretty much on the outs at this moment.
Right. And then her, like, other best friends, like, trying to get her fucking wasted.
Yeah.
Her friend's like, oh, I just want, like, a beer. Or, like, the main girl's like, oh, I just want a beer. And her friend's like, sure. And then, of course, like, this dude shows up, which I think is Riley's the first guy, right?
Yeah.
And this is...
Matt Mercer plays that character.
Yeah, and he's the... You know, if you saw Can't Hardly Wait, he's the Ethan Embry that's, like, in
he's
love
like
with
the
this
dorky
girl.
guy that's in love with this girl that can't love him back.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So he's like, hey, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. Trying to kind of like...
And Alice, like, her friend is like, get away, fucking loser. She's not interested. And he was just, like, trying to say hi.
Yeah.
And it's just, like, so awkward at that moment. You're just like, oh, dude. Like,
And then she goes to, like, find her friend in the house because some other dude shows up and is like, hey, can I get you a drink? What's up? And she's like, oh, no, my friend's getting me one. So she's getting all these dudes. And there's that big dude that comes up and he's like, same shit. So then when she goes in the house figuring out where the fuck her drink's at, and her friend's actually making her, like, these, like, heavily vodka drinks. And she's like, that's not, I just wanted, like, a beer. And she's like, nah, you're kind of depressed. And, you know, like,
We're
let's
here to
get
have a good
fucked
fucking
up.
time,
Let's
yeah.
have a good time, you know. And in the meantime, you do see this, like, guy kind of in the background. Like,
and they never show his face.
no, they don't. And, you know, like, kind
And it's
of like,
blurred almost, isn't it?
right, yeah. And you could see that he's staring at her, like, you know, he's very interested.
Yeah. And he goes up and she's wasted later on at the party, and he goes up and talks to her. And I don't know about you, man, but I kind of get on this whole bandwagon where he just kind of sounds like a fucking guy that is the bad guy and, you know, the villain of this fucking movie.
Oh, 100%.
He's like, are you alone? Like, his voice is very deep and monotone. He just basically sounds like a fucking serial killer.
And she's like, oh, like, how do you know? I forget Anna, I think, was like the chick that was having the party.
Alice,
that's what it was. And he's like, oh, I don't really know her. I came with a friend.
Yeah, which was the fat guy who invited her, the fat guy with the chin strap invited her to the party. Yep, the druggie dealer.
Yep.
So anyway, so she gets way too wasted and ends up hooking up with this guy that you can't really see.
Mysterious guy.
This mysterious guy, which if you see this chick in this movie, like, Sam is a babe, and this guy that's talking to her is, I mean, you shouldn't even be fucking talking to her. I mean, he sounds creepy as fuck.
Right. But she was like, I don't even remember what the hell I was doing anymore, so she was already, like, wasted. So, you know, when the scene cuts, they're banging in the car.
Yeah.
Which kind of got a little rapey.
Yeah, it was, because she wanted him to stop the whole time. So that was kind of, and then it kind of flashes forward to her waking up in her bed.
Yeah.
And...
yeah, the next morning. So
yeah, and this is where it kind of, and you thought it got pretty dark at the beginning. This is where it gets even kind of more fucked up, really.
Yeah, because she essentially wakes up and, like, feels hungover naturally.
Yeah.
You know.
And it flashes day one. This takes place over 72 hours.
Yep.
So day one, she feels like she's just sick as shit. She looks at herself in the mirror. She's looks hungover as fuck.
Right. She's
and
arguing
she thinks
with
she's
her
just
mom.
hungover. Yeah.
She's trying to go to work and deal with shit, and this is where she starts getting, like, the. Oh wait, no, that's actually day two. I'm going.
Yeah,
okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Nothing really good happens to day two. So she just thinks she's really hungover at this point. She's just fucking fatigued, and she looks like dog shit. As, you know, many of us have done on the day after a bender at a friend's party where you're ripping shots when somebody's peer pressuring you.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's just like, wow, you know, like, I'm really just hungover. I can't go to work. So, you know, she just basically chills out for the day, goes to sleep, and then day two happens.
Oh, boy, day two.
Yeah. So, day two.
She wakes up still kind of
feeling
fatigued.
This, what she thinks is a fucking hangover at this point.
And which is funny because I have friends who are like, oh, man, if I go out drinking one night, I'm hungover for like 3 days straight.
Yep. And that's what she thinks is going on right now.
Yeah.
Until she goes to work.
And so when she's like at her tables, which, by the way, actually, let me bring this up. Riley is there, which is the guy that was
the
original.
stalkery, like...
Yeah, the stalkery, I want to be your boyfriend guy.
Yeah, the friend zone guy.
Yeah. So he shows up, and apparently he's a regular. He goes there all the time just to see her. You know, if you work in a bar and you're a female, you probably know exactly who this guy is. But on a friendly level, this guy's not actually trying to be creepy.
Yeah, he's not
trying
creepy
to be, at
all. He's just got a bad...
He's a boy next door.
Her friend's a bitch.
Yeah.
And they even, like, say that later on in the movie, too.
Right.
Like, yeah, like she's a bitch.
Yeah.
Like the whole time.
So then she's like, oh, fuck, like I am still kind of feeling hungover. I don't want to deal with this dude. So she tried to ask like one of her coworkers, like, hey, take my table. And then so they like traded tables. So when she goes to, there's another table with two ladies sitting there trying to take their order. Now her head's starting to get all fucked up. There's what's like the high pitched beams like in her ears.
Yeah, there's something going on with her. She's starting to feel the effects of the spooky STD at this point.
Yeah, so it gets to a certain point and she has to like take off to the bathroom. She's like, watch my table, I gotta go to the bathroom.
Yeah, and then we both with the eye contact here, if you can fucking see it right now, is fucking just stupendous because we're just like, who's gonna fucking tell this part? Okay, I'll do it. Fuck it. You took the bullet the first time. I'll take the bullet the second time. You're gonna have to take the bullet the next time. We're gonna share bullets.
There's a lot here.
There's a lot of bullets
back and forth.
There's a lot of friendly fire here.
Yeah.
So she goes to the bathroom and she's got stomach pains and stuff, and she just like urinates a ton of blood. And
well, yeah, yes, you're right. The way that they show it though is like she's sitting on the toilet just being like, what the fuck, like why is this high-pitched beam going in my ears? And her coworker's like knocking on the door like, hey, are you okay? Like,
and she's like, I'm fine.
Yeah, she's like, I'm fine, like I'll be out in a second. And she's like, I'm just got bad cramps. And then like when the girl leaves, then the girl like stands up, drops her panties, and then she starts peeing. So you hear like regular pee, and then it starts. The sound effect is like chunky milk falling out of the gallon, and then you're like, oh, ew, what?
Yeah, and then she stands up and looks in the toilet, and she's like, oh my god. Yeah.
The entire bowl of the toilet is completely blood red.
I'm like having flashbacks to watching this movie, sitting here looking at you, and there's just this uncomfortable look that Tony and I are giving each other, like, and we're just like, I'm like, dude, are we really like talking about this where people are actually going to listen to it? And we're just like, man, maybe this is the point where maybe we didn't think this one all the way through.
I know, yeah.
There's no going back now, but we're just like, I'm just sitting here, I'm like, man, okay, and it gets worse.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, like, this is one of few movies that made me feel squeamish, like, through, like, a good chunk of this movie.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I rub my face like you're doing, just rubbing his eyes right now. We're just like, oh my god, you got the stress. You're just like rubbing your face watching it because it makes you feel so uncomfortable.
Yeah, so like like you remember like in It, like when Bev is in the bathroom and like the entire fucking bathroom covers like in blood.
Yeah,
that's essentially what the inside of that toilet looked like.
Yeah, just the inside, not the bathroom.
Yeah. So this is when she starts like freaking out, like, what the fuck, like, why is this happening? Because I'm assuming that she probably knows when her period is supposed to start, but now this is. So she starts freaking out, grabbing TP to try to clean off like the toilet because there's whatever. Yeah. Flushing it down, and then when she like looks in the mirror, she can see like veins showing like in her hips and like the bottom of her belly. And
then she decides to go see a fucking doctor.
Right.
Yeah, so she goes to a doctor, and he asks her if she's sexually active, which at this point, I mean, like, you see something that horrific, like, are you just... She kind of keeps it to herself a little bit with some silence, and he's like, I take that as a yes.
First she tries to, like, pass off, like, I'm not feeling well, trying to get by on that. And then, then she was saying something I think it's probably, like, with her period or whatever, and he's like, all right, so, like, what's going on? And she's like, well... He's like, all right, well, let's take a look.
Yeah, her ears are infected. Like, her like eyes are fucking like. I mean, you can't see what's going on, but you can tell that the doctor sees something's not fucking.
Yeah, right. At first he's like, okay, it seems like you have like a head cold. It's infected for your ears and nose, whatever. So then he's like, all right, well, like you said, you're having problems. He's like, let's take a look. So now she's like, and as he starts to like pull her pants down, and then she's like, well. What if I told you, like, kind of have, like, a rash down there, and then he's, like, sits back, and he's like, okay. So that's when he's like, are you sexually active? And she doesn't say anything. He's like, okay, I'm going to take your silence as a no.
Yeah. But she also announced she hasn't had sex with the guy in 8 months up until 2 days ago.
Right. Which he has to get out of her.
Yeah. And he's like, well, you're not being honest with me because there's no way this could happen in 2 days.
Right. And he sees the veins showing like on her like hips and belly, And also when she's holding her arm, there's like scabby shit, going on. So he knows something's up.
Yeah. And then he kind of like says, well, we got to do some testing first to figure out what's going on with you. And, she's like, can you, there's nothing you can do for me. He's like, not until we know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So then afterwards she goes and meets, does she, it's the next day where she.
Well, no, this is still all day two. There's a lot going on here. Yeah. It takes place a little bit later and, she goes back to work. Remember, like, she's like, No,
she goes to lunch with Alice. And she goes and walks in. She's like,
"Oh yeah,
sorry,
right.
I'm late. I had a doctor's appointment or whatever."
Yeah.
And she pulls off her glasses. She's like, and her friend Alice is like, "Christ sakes, what the fuck is going on with you?"
Yep.
And her eye is like bloodshot. And I'm not talking like normal bloodshot, like you would see. Like there's actual blood in her eye.
Yeah, like it's just like in the one eye.
And she's like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Go look in the fucking mirror." So she goes to the bathroom. And she looks in the mirror and she sees that her eye is completely fucked up.
And at this point, she like, this sucks, but she's having like that, like, what the fuck is going on? Like one of those kind of reactions.
Yeah. And, it's just, and if you're still, if you're listening, this does get to a point, a very good story point. So she goes back and she's just like, her friend's like, what the fuck is going on? She's like, I have to go, naturally after this point. And then,
so that's when, then she goes home and, she's sitting down and she's peeing and she was thinking about like what the doctor telling her, like, listen, maybe put some like lotion on the rash, and hopefully this will kind of like help or moisturize the skin or whatever. So she's sitting there on the toilet and she puts lotion on her skin and starts rubbing on her vagina this lotion, and she's like cringing with like pain, like it hurts. And the sound effect of that, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah,
God,
it makes my skin crawl just thinking about it again.
Oh yeah, just like rubbing the lotion on like a gross virus vagina. I don't even have words for this. I'm just saying things. It just made me feel so weird. But the funny thing too is that like after she like is like rubbing it, she actually brings her hand up and sniffs it, and she's like, ugh. Like,
yeah, there's something not right at this point.
Yeah. So and then when she's like okay, she stands up and like grabs her underwear and goes to walk away. There's a maggot that like hit the ground. There's a maggot that fell out of her vagina.
Oh, we're leaving nothing up to imagination at this point.
No,
huh?
I'm fucking everything's here.
Right,
yeah.
Well, fuck it. All right, we're
these
throwing
people
it all
have
out
to
there.
know.
All right, so
the maggot falls out of her fucking vagina.
Yeah, that does happen. I witnessed it. Cringeworthy and all, face rubs and all. Yeah.
The disgusting sounds of that rubbing and then the sniffing, the maggot falls. Time passes on, and then she's like, all right, I'm still going to try to get through with my day. I ordered lunch, okay?
Yeah, I was like eating lunch at the fucking time I watched this too.
Yeah,
I was having dinner at the time.
Okay, yeah, I ordered lunch, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna eat lunch and watch this. And this is when then she starts brushing her teeth. She's about to go out and do whatever. Starts brushing her teeth, and then she's like, and then she spits and notices like the blood in the sink, and she's like, oh, why am I spitting up blood? You have gingivitis, bitch. That's what's going on.
Yeah.
No, it's worse than that.
It gets a lot worse than that.
Yeah. So then,
and the same scene, I think, is
no. Well, I don't know what you're about to say.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay. But then she's like brushing and she's like, ow. And then she starts sticking her hand in her mouth, grabs the fucking tooth and yanks it out. And as I said, man, the teeth pulling shit. Oh man.
I think that exact moment in that scene is where like I had a piece of pizza in my mouth and it just drops onto the plate. I was just like, oh, dude, all right. I'm like,
yeah,
puts the pizza to the side. I'm just like, all right, man. I'm like, this is not the kind of movie you want to be eating dinner over.
I was eating Chinese. I had teriyaki chicken in my mouth, and I like had to turn my face away from the TV while I was like chewing on this piece of chicken, and this girl's yanking teeth out. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, and there's Tony's phobia for you right there.
Listen, I had no problem eating Chinese while she's, maggots are falling out of her vagina, but the teeth pulling, like
the teeth pulling is like nails on a chalkboard.
Oh man, yeah.
And we mentioned nails on a chalkboard. Yeah, we're gonna get into my
Yeah,
phobia next.
that's coming. That's in day 3, I believe.
Yeah. So.
Well, there's still, and there's one more thing. Do you remember what happened still for this? There's
No,
one
I thought
more,
it was day 3. Went on to that
there's
point where
one more
gets...
thing that happens, is that she tries to lay down to go to sleep, and she wakes up feeling sick, and she sits up and like holds her mouth like, oh shit, I'm gonna puke. So she runs into the bathroom, starts puking up blood, and this is when like her mom's coming in. It's like, what's wrong with you? You on drugs? Blah blah blah.
Yeah, she's an ex-heroin addict.
Right.
Which is what her mom thinks is happening, but what is actually happening is way worse. If you haven't got the gist of that yet.
Right. So then she's like puking up blood, and she's like, no, I'm just sick, and her mom like walks away. So then it like cuts scene to like her like kind of like sit back against the tub after puking and like passes out. Well, she wakes up in the morning, and then there's fucking blood. She's in her underwear, and there's this blood all underneath her, across the floor, just fucking.
Yeah, I didn't remember
everywhere.
that until you just brought it up.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. So yeah, like that's yeah. I'm like, oh shit, like you're waking up and there's just fucking blood everywhere. So now there's another fucking mess. You're just bleeding for your vagina. You know what the fuck's going on with yourself? That's when day 3 hits.
Yeah. Day 3 is kind of brings everything together. Some more, of the where all the gore kind of starts making more sense and everything that's happening, and it's not really tremendously gory.
No.
The effects are used really, really well.
To make you cringe. But
to make you cringe, but not make me, because I'm not a big fan of like those films like we talked about, like Human Centipede. I've had no desire to watch it at all.
I love them. You're gonna have to watch at least 2 of them.
Yeah, I'm gonna be forced to. I feel at some point. But I'm not a big buyer of like the whole Eli Roth like snuff films that whatever.
Snuff films are fucked.
Yeah,
but I mean, like
Eli Roth's like portrayal of fucking horror and stuff like that. It's not my thing. But Contracted is done really, really well. So I'm that's why day 3 happens, where there's more, there's story involved to it, why these things start happening. These things are kind of just happening, and you're just like, whoa, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, day 3 starts with the shower scene.
What happens during the shower scene?
So at first you're like, every horror movie you watch, oh shit, girl's taking the shower scene. Cool, some boob action, right? Although when you're watching this, you probably don't want to see what her boobs look like. They're probably fucking gross and whatever.
Yeah, you're expecting the worst at this point because they've already prepared you for the worst.
Right. This is just when she's in the shower and she's like washing herself, and then it cuts to like her feet, and then like a lop of fucking hair falls down. This is like when the hair is falling out.
Yeah, and then she gets ready casually and goes about her day like. I think at this point she's on her way to the doctor again, right? Because like shit's going wrong, because in the morning like everything's fucked up, right? She like starts vomiting blood.
Yeah. So well, actually, right before she's about to leave, her and her mom get like another argument.
That exchange.
Yeah, her mom noticed it and she went and freaked out. So then she puts a beanie on, and that's when she darts out of the house.
So she's on her way to the doctor. And her boss, what is his name, Marco or something like that, who's like, she's pissed off numerous times throughout the last 2 days. She's called off shifts, left abruptly, and he convinces her to come in, and for some fucking reason, she's like, okay, I'll go in. Right.
It was just like that guilty feeling, and I've done that before multiple times, where it's my day off, okay, and my boss calls me, I'm like, I shouldn't answer this, but I guess I will. And it's like, hey, you should come in. It's like, okay.
Well, I'm just like, and looking at her, if I was that person, I'd be like, fuck no, I'm not coming
100%.
to work.
Yeah.
And no, she's on her way to Nikki's house.
No, you're right. It's to the restaurant first.
Yeah. So she's on her way to Nikki's house. She gets called into work. She gets guilt tripped into going to work.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. And then the next scene is, she's touching people's food with her bare hands. She's like making salads and putting other things together with her bare hands. Meanwhile, she's
like her hands are kind of, they're decomposing at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he's like, she's got glasses on, and he like looks at her, and this is kind of where it becomes puzzling to me, is he looks at her and sees her eyes are both fucked up at this point, and he's like, well, I can't have you looking like a total shit. Just try to squint at this point.
No, he tells her, he's like, you should go. And then so he calls like the other chick, and he's like, hey, can you come in? He's like, hey, so-and-so's going to be here, then you can go fix your face.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, cool. Then this is your scene.
Yeah, where what is it? The scene where her nail falls off in their food. God, Jesus. Yeah. This is my phobia. Is where the nail thing and her nail falls off and it's making me do that fucking weird thing with my hands to make sure they're still there. I like flick them in the air. God. So anyway, that falls off in their food, and Marco, her manager or whatever, was like, "Get the fuck out of here."
Right. So
she goes to.
She actually now heads over to
the drug dealer's house.
Yep.
The fatter guy.
Yep. Go ahead.
And she goes there, and she's like, and keep in mind that she's a recovering drug addict. And he's like, she's not getting her, what she thinks is going to be, the cure to all this for another 2 days from her doctor.
Right. She needs something
so
strong,
she's like, hey, I need something to get me through the next 2 days. So he gives her, drugs or whatever, and she gets high as,
which is the heroin.
Yeah, and then her friend Alice, who I'm guessing is a fellow drug addict as well, not recovering. And she kind of starts showing this darker side to herself, where she's more violent at this point. You kind of still think it's hysterics because of what's going on with her.
Mm-hmm.
So she storms out of the house, and she goes and visits Nikki at this point. Correct?
Yep. She goes to Nikki.
And they kind of have this like.
She shows up, and Nikki's like, "Hey, glad to see you."
Yeah, you don't look like shit at all.
Well, she doesn't really notice at first, even though like her like lip is like on the one side of her mouth is kind of like decomposing or whatever, but she still has her glasses on, and she's like trying to be cool. And then she's like, "Hey, like, I brought us a bottle of wine. Like, let's fix things. Like, I miss you." And there was a moment there too where I'm like, "Oh man," like, because the main character's like, "Hey," like, touches her, like, like, if you're gonna be, you can't be like so on the defense, because otherwise things won't happen. And then they're both leaning in when they're talking. I was like, "Oh no, don't kiss her.
Oh, don't do it. Yeah, don't fucking do
don't
it.
Do it. Yeah,
because you already know some shit's really going wrong, and you're just like, oh man, this is what the movie's about. This is why the movie's called Contracted.
Yeah.
And then she
bails, and that's when she finds out that she gets that letter, of that plant school.
Yeah.
Thing
She was like raising plants, and it's like almost like a sub thing, of course.
Just to show. Because she had these two beautiful plants that was supposed to be in this competition or whatever the fuck it was. They never really went deep into it. But so she rushes home and like gets these two plants that she grew to be in this. And by the time she shows up to the place, the guy's like, "Oh my God, yeah, you have the blah, 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 blah plants we've been waiting for." And
they look like shit at this point.
Yeah, and obviously with her touch made those plants die. And the guy, and when she's like, "Yeah, these are them," and the guy's like, "Well, those are dead." And now he's unsure if this is the actual person. He has her ID, and he's like, "Well, you have glasses on. Like, can I see your face to make sure you're the right person?" And she takes her glasses off. One eye is all red, and now the other eye is like a pus yellow.
Yeah.
Like full, no pupil. Yeah. And so the guy's like, "Hold on a second," and then like runs upstairs, and then comes back down. He's like, "Yeah, sorry, we can't use you here, for this." And she's like, "No, I got accepted. Like, I got the letter. I can go." He's like, "No, yeah, there's nothing I can do. You gotta go." Yeah.
And then she goes back to Nikki's place to kind of.
Yep.
Yeah, and this is where everything kind of the climax starts of the whole movie.
She needs someone like. Yeah, so
she.
All the shit.
Yeah, so she goes to Nikki's place, and turns out like. Alice, her friend, had told her that she was using again.
And also had sex with a guy.
Which and
really
about the
STD
and all that shit. So she's pissed. So she gets rejected by Nikki, who's like a mega bitch of an ex. And she basically says, don't, reject me or whatever, and ends up killing her.
Yeah.
And then doesn't believe what she does at that point, and just flees the scene and goes over to Alice's place.
Right.
And
same thing. Like, I just need somebody. Like, I'm going through shit. this is what you always wanted, right? You know, like, it's a sub story throughout the movie. Everyone keeps going like, you know, Alice like wants to bang you, like she's trying to deter you from everything else, like she wants to bang you.
Yeah.
So she uses that to get into Alice's apartment and get close, and then she's like, this is what you wanted, right? And then they get close
and they start making out.
Yeah,
too.
I'm like, don't do it.
It's almost like that scene in Pet Sematary where like you're just like, don't, no.
So yeah, then they start making out.
Yeah, they start smooching.
Yeah, now because like her mouth is, oh man, the whole one side is like decomposing, and like when you're looking at it, like you're like, there's no fucking way I would kiss anybody like that.
And we don't want to give away the ending to this movie, so that's why we're kind of keeping things graphic as now. But when we kind of come up with the ending of the movie, it's gonna all make sense.
Right, yeah, absolutely. So then Alice is like, man, yeah, this is what I wanted. And this is why Alice is being a bitch earlier in the movie, because she's just like
jealous of Nikki.
Yeah, exactly. So then she starts kissing her and they're smooching, and you're like, oh man, because like her teeth are also starting to like get all black and gross.
Yeah. And
then all of a sudden she pulls away and then fucking pukes blood all over Alice's face. And you're like, oh God.
God, it's so gross.
Yeah. That's when she's like, and then she's like, well, you know, like, what the fuck? Like, what's wrong with you? And then it's like telling her like to stay the fuck away. And then that's when she ends up killing Alice as well.
Yeah. Traditionally, you know, same way she killed the other Nikki as well. She chokes her on the floor.
Well, she choked Nikki. Alice, she stabbed.
Oh, she stabbed her. Yeah,
she stabbed Alice. Yeah. So now she's at this point where she's like, which is actually really funny. This also crossed my mind. I'm just gonna throw this out there. With this whole scene, it reminded me of the Killers lyrics. Like, it started off with a kiss. How did it end up like this?
Oh, good.
But like, yeah, so like then you know, she pukes the blood on her, and then she like knocks down, and she actually chews like a chunk on her neck.
She bites her in the she bites her in the neck. Yeah, that's how she kills her.
Right. So then she's like, fuck, and then so she goes into Alice's room, finds like a nice dress, calls Riley. Here's the last attempt. Now Riley's coming back, so she calls Riley and says, hey, I need you to come over, and then so he comes over. And they're at Alice's place, and he's like, oh, where's she at? And she's like, oh, she's in the back. And she's like, you know, I know that you've always liked me, and, you know, you're the only person I can trust right now.
And he's being, like, very consoling at this point.
Oh,
innocent.
100%. Yeah. And she's like, you know, I'm going through changes. I know you won't hurt me. And he's like, no. He's like, you know, I've always liked you. I'm surprised that you like me back. And, so then they start making out. I'm like, oh God! Like, I'm like putting my hands up on my face, going like through my hair. I'm going, no,
all
Riley.
The anxiety, all that. Yeah.
And to be fair, she is like kind of hiding her face ish. So they start making out, and then she's like, come on, get these fucking pants off. And then he like puts her up like on this like table, and then he's like, oh shit. He's like, I don't have a condom, and she's like, it's fine, you'll be fine.
Big mistake.
Yeah, so then he gets in there and he's like banging her, and he's like, oh my God, you're so wet. No joke, I was watching out loud and I go, you have no idea.
Yeah.
And then, so
Mister, you should have been wearing protection.
Yeah. If it's tingling, you should have pulled out.
Yeah.
Instead, he keeps going, and then he's like, oh, it's like, it's feeling tingly. Oh, and then he's like, hold on a second. And he pulls out, and all of those fucking, like, mealworms, right? Those are mealworms.
Yeah.
They start falling out of her vagina like a dozen of them all over the floor, and he's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and he starts panicking.
Yeah, and then he starts like puking. He runs to the bathroom, starts puking in the toilet, like looks in the mirror. He's got blood all over his like pelvic area, his dick. He's like trying to wipe it down. He's like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Don't fucking touch me. What the fuck is wrong with you? And then she flees in a panic.
Yeah.
And she gets in the car and
calls her mom
and starts, apologizing, saying, hey, you're right, there is something wrong with me, and
I'm so sorry, you're right all along.
And she starts kind of fading in and out, and she fades out one last time, and you kind of hear this brake screeching, and she hits somebody, and then it kind of goes to black, and then it comes back to where she's in the car, and she gets out, she's a little woozy, and you're thinking, oh, okay, there's more to this movie where, you think that it's going to continue on, and this is kind of where it brings everything into, together, where I was, I was actually surprised by the ending.
Yeah,
not
same.
totally 100% surprised, but I didn't see the ending coming the way it did.
Same.
So she gets out, and she starts stumbling around, and she's a zombie. So at the end, this whole thing that was happening to her was the beginning of the zombie apocalypse, which I found incredibly clever.
Yeah, I thought it was a great idea.
So Sam was a zombie at the end, and she's stumbling around in the streets.
There's police there. Her mom's there. The police are saying, like, stay in the car, like, don't move, chill out. And she's essentially just, like, in that zombie face looking back at the cops, looking back at her mom, and her mom's like, Sam, like, come here, just come to me, it's your mother, come here. And she's looking back and forth until she runs towards her mom and jumps on her, and like, boom, cutscene.
Yep, and that's the end of the movie. So all the gore and all the stuff we were explaining, which is not as over the top as maybe we were, it is cringeworthy.
Oh, it's definitely cringeworthy.
Had everything to do with the birth of the zombie apocalypse, which I thought was clever because there had been no take on that at that point, in that viewpoint, because you'd heard like of chemical like experiments and government experiments and that, or sometimes people just don't explain it, or it was monkeys or whatever, like in 28 Days Later.
This is a very creative way.
This was a very creative way of doing it. I thought that Sam's character was great.
Yeah.
I loved the dialogue. I like Matt Mercer playing Riley. Overall, I thought it was great. I appreciate you like bringing that to me because I had never seen it before, and I love discovering new things.
Yeah, and like so I said, like I actually forgot about the movie until you mentioned other movies like It Follows or whatever, and I go, oh, like a fucking light bulb popped up in my head. I was like, holy shit!
Have you seen Contracted? I'm like, no, I haven't.
Right. So yeah, I mean, it's a fun watch. It's something like completely different from everything else. Overall, I fucking loved it, and I would actually give this movie a 10 as well. I think everything was done great.
The only criticism I have at this point is that the bitch should have gone to an emergency room at some point. She was waiting on a doctor to call her. She needed to go somewhere major with the symptoms that were going on for her, which made it kind of less believable for me. But the story overall and the plot ending, I'd probably give it about a 7.
Wow, that's actually lower than I was expecting.
Yeah.
I mean, but think of it this way. If it went your way...
It's one of those movies where I was kind of like, if I were in that situation where you could understand this point.
Well,
if you had an STD that was going to this extreme, like, you shouldn't be you shouldn't be going to work. You shouldn't be doing any of these things.
Going to all these people,
like, literally in a fucking emergency room.
And the doctor told her,
I can't
don't interact with anybody. Go home and stay there until we get the blood work back.
Yeah,
Instead,
that was
she's
kind of
fucking off.
Yeah, because that was kind of the thing. Like, I mean, if I were in that point, I'd be like, dude, fuck this. I need to go to a fucking emergency room and get major medical treatment at this point.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I thought it was that was kind of the part that threw me off about it. The ending did bring it together for me, which I thought was really cool and innovative, a different take on kind of the zombie apocalypse. But overall, I mean, it's good. I liked it a lot. And also, I'm not a big fan of the gore thing like you are. So part of the gore thing like turned me off to it a little bit.
Okay, you're all right. That's fair.
And that's where we kind of differentiate on our takes of horror movies, where you kind of appreciate the more gory stuff, where I'm more into the subtle atmosphere and all
Suspense.
that. Yeah.
Well, riddle me this, Joshua. If it went your way and the girl went to the emergency room, where do you go from there?
Where do you go from there? You could do it a lot more subtly, where she just looks ill. You don't have to have all the graphic scenery in there. Maybe at some point they just kind of send her home, whatever, and you don't have to get as deep into the gore factor of it. I find you can tell a great story without gore. And that's kind of where we differentiate in opinion there.
Sure, but
because I'm sure
then
like
what
in
do we
others,
do? Then what do we do? We make another film that's like in a hospital and there's a zombie like
Well,
Planet
I'm not
Terror
thinking-
or whatever.
Well,
you know,
I'm not sitting there thinking like, hey, I'm watching a zombie movie. I wonder like what's going on with her vagina. You know what I'm saying?
fair.
Yeah.
I think about that all the time.
Do
Just
you
in
really?
general
That's
life.
fucked up.
Just in general life.
Yeah, just in general life. But
I'm like,
but
I wonder what's going on with that girl's vagina.
But that's the only thing about it. I think that there's a lot to be left to imagination. I did enjoy it, but I mean, you know, like other zombie films hadn't done it, so I guess it needed to be done. But at the same time, I'm just thinking, I'm like, you know, I'm watching zombie movies. I'm not wondering what's, you know, coming out of the zombie's vagina, why she's like, you know, about to turn into a zombie. You know, I'm not wondering about those effects, I guess. Does she look sick? Does her eyes look sunken in? You know,
Right.
that. But I think that it's just with the sexual stuff of it, I could have done without.
Fair. I think I just I get so caught up like watching the movies. I'm so caught in the story, and most movies I watch, I put myself in that same position. Although something this crazy, I kind of forget about putting myself in that situation and just taking in everything that's fucking happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a lot. I mean, day 2, that's rough.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shit that went down
I mean,
in
it's
day 2.
It's time to go to the doctor and forget about your ex-fucking girlfriend and
Yeah.
what's going on around you. Like, there's a point in time where you need to take care of yourself.
Yeah. And I understand she was an emotional mess, but still, like, you're fucked. And you already know. And, you know, we actually really didn't really bring up, as far as that guy goes, there are subtle bits to the story where, like, Alice is like, hey, yeah, I've got a phone call from, the police. Like, this guy.
It's almost like a sub-story at that point, which I thought it could have done a little bit better with.
Right.
Yeah,
they're like, oh,
the guy who she had sex with at the party.
Nobody knew at the party.
Nobody knew, and the cops were trying to find him. And then that's why we probably passed it up, because it's such a small part of the movie where it could have been a little bit bigger of a part of the movie.
Right.
Which, you know, we talked about. You hadn't seen Contracted 2, which I watched, which I told you elaborate more on that storyline.
Right, and I'm actually really happy on the way you said it happened, because when you watch the ending of the first Contracted, you can only hope the second one's going to be about that, you know. So I'll watch it, and then we can talk about it another day.
Yeah, definitely. All right, cool. So we're going to take a gentleman's smoke break.
Okay.
And then we're going to get back into some more creepy, nerdy shit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We still have 2 more movies to get through.
All right, right on, man.
Okay.
All right, we'll be back.
BRB.
Folks, my name is Mayor Wirtz. Hello, folks. Mayor Wirtz here. Hello, folks. Mayor Wirtz here. Mayor Wirtz here. Mayor Wirtz. Wirtz.
Well, this is awkward. I'm not really sure how that clip even got in there. Someone's playing tricks on me. Well, anyways, I do have your attention now. You guys, we had so much fun filming this episode that we actually ended up talking longer than we expected, so I had to split the episode in 2. I hope you enjoyed this first episode. A lot of fun, funny, gross shit that I enjoy that Josh hates. But now that you finished this episode, there is the second link. Just the same thing. It's just the Mr. Boggie, STGs, and Mr. Magoo Part 2. Somewhere along those lines. You'll find it. Just go to the page. You're not a dum-dum. Just find the second part. Click on it. Watch it. You'll be fine. You're all adults here. Anyways, thanks so much for listening, guys. I hope you enjoyed the first part. Click and check out the second part. So much fun. Thanks. Bye-bye.